Welcome to the Investor Coaching Show, a podcast to help you get an insider's view of the financial world and escape common investment traps. We look at the financial news of the day and help you make sense of it so you can relax about money. And here's your host, Paul Winkler.
I'm just messing with RJ. He turns on my mic and I turn it off, and he turns it on and I turn it off. Oh, doesn't it fun to have us here, man?
Yeah, it's so much fun. I can actually talk to you.
I know, it is fun. It is awesome. I get to hear him during the week. I mean, he's like the big man in town these days at the station during the week.
He usually has to bail me out of the fire when you're out of town.
Oh, is that right?
Don't know if I'm the big man, but I've done a fair amount of fill-in.
Hey, well, see, that's it. I mean, they don't put you out there during the week on that board unless you know what you're doing. So, I'm just saying.
Oh, he was there this week.
I know, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
They don't put him on the board unless he knows what he's doing. Yeah, that's where I was going. Okay, so, Evan, you want to comment on the last thing at all? You want me to replay it for them just real quick?
Go ahead, sure.
Okay, so this is what they were saying, this AI conference, small group of people, and they were asked this question.
Then someone said, okay, how many people in this room believe you have a soul? No more definition than that. From that. Out of the 50 people in that room, how many do you think said we have a soul? 48. People have a soul.
48.
She's optimistic.
Yeah.
Low. Okay, what's your number?
10%.
You're right. It was 5.
5 people out of 45. So, yeah. And these are the people deciding your future, as Becky said.
Right, yeah.
When it comes to AI. Yeah, it's
so
great.
there's several things there. One, Paul Jones is, I don't know if he's Catholic or evangelical, but he's a believer. Mm-hmm. And, he's trying to communicate this stuff. And, Becky's comment was, holy cow, these are the people, leading the charge. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And the comment was made in advance of him saying they really do need regulation because they don't think anybody has a soul.
Yeah.
And, it's certainly frustrating, but it does get down to this whole freedom and responsibility thing. But when they talk about the regulation, and, last hour we were talking about when was the last time we heard an industry saying they wanted to be regulated.
Right.
They're now debating, though, on what kind of regulation do they want. One of the models is the FDA, like the Food and Drug Administration. And so they don't want any organization like that regulating them because it slows down the process of creating AI.
Right.
They're wanting something more like the National Transportation Safety Board, that, okay, after a plane crashes, we're going to go investigate and see what went wrong. It's going to end up somewhere between those two things, I think. But do they really want regulation, or they just really want the sense that AI is safe, that regulation gives them?
And I think maybe in the next comment, he addressed that to some extent.
Yeah.
Clearly, we need to regulate AI. Yeah. We need to do it tomorrow. We're late already. We should have already done it. We need to do it, and we need to start with just the simplest thing, which is we've got to watermark all AI so that we know the difference between what's human and authentic and what's algorithmically generated.
I have so many questions.
So I think that makes that point. If you have, let's say, somebody speaking, and there was somebody who's a military guy that was supposedly in a hospital, and he's speaking, and there was a friend of ours, she looked at it, goes, "Oh my goodness, you hear what he said?" And my wife's going, "That's fake." But how many people are pulled?
Right.
They're pulled off track by seeing something like that, and they think it's real. And he's talking about put a watermark on it, just so that people recognize that it's fake. What can we do? Because it is so easy to mislead people into thinking that one person said something that they didn't say.
Right. And I don't think there's, I'm no attorney, but I don't think there's any constitutional hurdle to overcome to watermark that stuff. You're not limiting speech, you're just labeling it.
Yeah. I think, so anyway, I thought that was an interesting point. So Evan, I know you had other stuff. Without further ado, let's go to I know you have some interesting things there, and I just want to make sure you jump into that.
Here's an interesting thing. I think it was both the S&P and the NASDAQ set records on Friday. I don't think the Dow has set a new record since, whenever it was 50,000 and change. But in the midst of all of that, Americans are losing confidence in having enough for retirement. The long-running poll shows the lowest confidence in nearly a decade, thanks partly to concerns about inflation. And this is out of the Wall Street Journal in Ferguson. Americans are getting more worried about having enough money for a comfortable retirement, thanks to rising costs and fears about the health of entitlement programs. And as I go through this, there's a distinction between workers and retirees, because some of the data gets a little bit muddy. Some 61% of workers are very or somewhat confident in having enough resources for retirement. But that's down from 67% just last year. And in 2021, it was a high of 72, which is really interesting because we were just coming through COVID in that point, and that was the highest number they'd had for a while. So this is the lowest confidence level they've had in about 10 years. Though many have added significantly to their wealth because of the booming stock market, people are more focused on inflation concerns and other issues. Janet Kiefer.
Interesting, which is the very reason I tell people that annuities can be really problematic, folks.
Yes.
Janet
Kiefer estimates that her spending is about 20% above the level a year ago because of rising prices for items like groceries, gas, and her Medicare Advantage plan. So here was an interesting thing. Now she's 73 and she works part-time selling wellness products, and said more of her retired customers are expressing interest in selling the same products to bring in extra income.
money. Yeah.
So here's the interesting thing. Among retirees, 40% said their retirement spending has been higher than they expected when they first retired, according to employee benefit research.
Yeah. Interesting. So how many people have a false sense of feeling that they're going to be okay in retirement, then they get to retirement, and they're actually spending more than they thought they would? Oh, that's super interesting.
Yeah, and this is a study out of University of Michigan, showed consumer sentiment fell in April to the lowest level in the survey's 70-plus year history, with Americans concerned that the Iran war could hit the domestic economy. And so the report that the Employee Benefit Research Institute was stating was done in January. And so there wasn't any impact of the war yet because it hadn't started. But both workers and retirees said they're concerned about potential cuts in Medicare and Social Security benefits.
Yeah, I hear that all the time. Yep.
I hear that all the time, too. And, it's just... They talk about the third rail of politics and all this kind of stuff. I haven't heard anyone saying they're cutting Medicare or Social Security benefits, but that message gets out enough that, people believe the lie.
Well, people hear that it's going to run out, and they don't recognize that what it is, it's the trust fund that runs out, and they don't necessarily hear all the possible fixes that would take care of it, and don't recognize that, gosh, we went through the same thing in 1980s, and Congress waited to the last minute. And then they came through and they did something. And then in the 1990s, it came up again. It was another problem, 10 years later. And then Congress came in and last minute they did something. And they'll probably there'll be something because that's a voting bloc that shows up at the polls. The thing that you said in there, Evan, you're talking about people not feeling ready. I was on Channel 5 and got into a conversation. And I talked about the workshop that we did down south.
Yeah.
And I made that comment and I was telling them the data from that. So those of you that, it'd be the vast majority of anybody listening to us right now that weren't there at that workshop.
Everybody that didn't pile into my office last week.
Yeah, exactly. We had this workshop, and one of the things I referred to was this article that was about how a 90% S&P 500, 10% short-term government bond portfolio would have beaten the vast majority of investors historically, return-wise. It would have done better. And, that was a Warren Buffett portfolio is what they called that. And I said, well, technically true because the vast majority of investors do really badly. But the other thing that you got to keep in mind is you can go very, very long periods of time where the S&P has no return. You can go especially when you have prices being very, very high compared to earnings and, compared to book values, that you could have a very long dry spell that follows that. You don't know when it's going to happen, but it could very well happen. It has several times throughout history, many times throughout history. So you recognize that if you're concentrating so much in that one area, you can have a real problem. And I made the comment, I says, well, let's just do this. Let's just do the stupid portfolio, I called it. And I says, we're not going to think too much about this. We're just going to put 10% of our money in short-term bonds, 10% in large U.S. instead of 90% large U.S. We'll put 10, and then we'll put 10 in small micro-cap companies and 10 in large value and 10 small value and international large companies, international small value and emerging markets and international, growth in value. And what I did is I said, okay, let's just say we did that. And, we kept the portfolio in balance, made sure that if one area got too high and we sold it and bought the other area that was lower and did that on a regular basis and so on and so forth. And let's say you paid a stupid high management fee, maybe something like what some of our competitors charge. You like that? Isn't that funny? But I used it. Yeah, I know. And so I did. I actually baked into it an incredibly high management fee, just to be kind. And I said, what if you took an income from that portfolio over 25 years? And literally, I took a 5% income, $50,000 a year off $1 million portfolio. I can't believe I said that out loud. But anyway, there's no governor on me. So I did that. What would have happened over 25 years? And we just did the data on that. And you ended up with a portfolio that had 1/4 of the money was the Warren Buffett portfolio. You ended up with 1/4 the amount of money at the end.
So 250,000?
It was 200 versus 800,000.
Okay.
Yeah. And we're taking a distribution that's too high. And remember, it's a stupid portfolio and the management fee was too high. So you ended up with a little bit less than what you started with. At the end of it, 800,000, you started with $1 million. You ended up with less.
Oh, okay, got it.
Yeah, so after 25 years, let's say you're 70 years old. What are you at? You're 95.
95, yeah.
At that particular point, who cares that you're down 200? But, you look at the other portfolio and it's a fraction of it. Why? Because risk matters is the point that I made in the workshop. You cannot only look at one thing, which is what so often the financial media has this tendency to do. They like to look only at return. And return wasn't bad on the Warren Buffett portfolio, but the risk was too high. The standard deviation was too high. The level of volatility was too high. And that's what created the problem in taking an income. And so often people forget to look at that when they're investing. They don't even think about it. In order to control risk, you've got to be able to measure it. And you've got to be able to understand what do you have to do to control the risk of a portfolio. Well, it's one of the things that you do, just to give you the answer, is you put things together that historically do not move with each other. They have low correlation with each other. And we often use the example of bathing suit sales and winter coat sales. When you're investing, that's what you're doing. It's not rocket science to figure out what you're doing, but the measurement of that was something that was pretty much rocket science when it was figured out. The level of complexity in figuring that out is pretty high, but it's doable. And so often what people don't recognize is that type of information is even out there because they don't hear about it. Why don't they hear about it? Because what sells? What sells is A, short-term past performance, B, the halo effect. You attach Warren Buffett's name to anything.
Right.
And all of a sudden people think, oh, credible. And he is credible. But recognize that's not how he got his wealth, doing that. He didn't go and put 90% of his money in the S&P 500.
Right.
That's not how we got there. And then you have another aspect of this is the status quo effect, which is people like, I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to stay where I am. I'm not going to do anything. I don't want to put forth any effort. Another thing that we do is the ostrich effect, which is, I don't want to hear anything bad. I don't want to hear, I don't want to hear that, what I'm doing right now, maybe not the best thing. And these are all psychological biases that drive our behavior. And recognize that this is the reason that investors have been struggling. I'm bringing this full circle. Why is it that people are struggling? Why is it they're going out there and taking these odd jobs when maybe they would rather travel the country and hang out with their grandkids? And I would submit, and this is one of the things, Evan, that we talked about, and Evan was like, oh, that was really cool. I was looking at the amount of money that people had accumulated at various ages. And I was looking at how much money do people at the age of 35 typically have accumulated for retirement. And, the number was like $45,000. And then what I did is, well, how much money do people typically have accumulated at age 65? And, the answer, when we look at that, it was like $200,000.
It was like $200,000.
Yeah, it was $200,000. And I said, well, what if, let's say you had somebody that had $35,000 and at age 35, if they had just captured market returns at age 65, what should they have had now? Not $200,000. It's like 4 times that.
Yeah.
Then I did this. I said, well, at age 75, they had $170,000. So if they had $35,000 or $45,000, at age 35, what should they have had at that point? And it was $2 million. And my point is this: investors are not getting market returns. We talk about this all the time. Studies, the Dalbar study, the S&P, the studies from Spiva that they do on how investors are doing. We look at the studies that Morningstar have done regarding this. Investors are not getting great results. Why? Because they're not following the rules of investing as they've heard their entire lives. Buy and hang on to things. Don't try to stock pick. Diversify the portfolio. Don't try to be a hero. And the reason they're not doing that is because the industry isn't doing it. Why isn't the industry doing it? I don't, there are a number of reasons. It could be ego. It could be, I think I can beat the market. I can do this. I can get higher returns.
Magical thinking.
Magical thinking. Sometimes it's called that. But I'm telling you that this is what the problem is. And we are bent on trying to fix it here on the Investor Coaching Show. Hey, just a note to you podcast folks, we just came out with a retirement income guide, and I'm super excited about this. There are all kinds of myths about taking income in retirement. People worry about running out of money, and rightfully so, because a lot of these myths can actually cause that. Now, the myths that you typically hear about, number one, like dividends, living off dividends in retirement, real estate, life insurance as a retirement investment, and annuities, and interest-bearing accounts, and target date funds. There are all kinds of things out there. What I want to do is put something together that walks through why those things are problematic, number one. Number two, the other thing that I wanted to do is walk through the evidence-based research on taking income in retirement. And we got a ton of data going all the way back to 1900. What's the logic behind it? And it's intensely logical. So we put that together, and all you have to do to download that, making it super simple, just go to paulwinkler.com/relax, and you can actually get into that very easily right there. So I would urge you to do that. Check it out, because I think you're going to really like it. paulwinkler.com/relax. All right, we're back here on the Investor Coaching Show. Paul Winkler, along with Evan Barner. paulwinkler.com is the website. Of course, you'll want to check that website out, because everybody should want to check that website out, especially check out the video that's on there, which is, why aren't we tripping over Wall Street millionaires? I get into it in a big way in that video. You can check it. That's on the front page of the website. Okay, Evan.
I think your last segment actually deals with answering that question.
It really did. It really did. I mean, it's kind of like,
Continuing with the great news of Americans losing confidence.
That's great news.
Copeland said last fall's government shutdown and the continuing standoff over funding for the Department of Homeland Security has caused people to focus more on problems with government funding and what it could mean for the government programs that retirees rely on. I hadn't really given that much thought of, if you're seeing Congress struggling with budgets and this and that, well, hey, what happens if they don't fund Social Security this year, fund Medicare this year? So it did create some concern. So here we go. This is a test, Paul.
Okay, so I'm just thinking term limits. It's this one way to build them in automatically.
So here to me was the money quote in this article for a number of reasons.
All right.
Jim Clare, 62, a financial advisor at Double Eagle Partners in Charlotte, North Carolina,
Okay.
said he and many of his clients have decided to take Social Security as soon as they're eligible because of concern over the health of the program.
Yeah. So the pro rata decrease in the benefits will apply to them as well, plus the decrease for having taken it early.
It will, but here was what jumped out at me.
Okay.
He's a financial advisor.
I know.
Taking Social Security
know.
at 62, which means either he's
not
making
going to earn
less
much
than
money.
$24,000
he's
a
not
year,
he's not earning much money.
or
Let's
he's
just-
a good financial advisor that's not going to get any of his Social Security. Now, like, that's the other reason
that is pretty funny.
we aren't seeing Wall Street millionaires is people are getting crazy advice.
It is pretty funny. So yeah, if you don't know what Evan's talking about there, so you have the $2, every $2 that you earn over the threshold, and it's in the mid $20,000 range, you get $1 of your Social Security taken away up to your full retirement age. So for him, it would be age 67. So it tells us that his income isn't very high, so you don't take financial advice from a broke person. I think is one of the rules. Is if somebody's broke, don't take financial advice from them. But also don't take financial advice from them if they're going against logic with how the Social Security system works. When you're looking at taking it early, the way the system works is when you have your full retirement age, 67, you'll have a 5/9 decrease in your benefit for every month that you take it early. So in effect, if you take it 3 years early, 5/9, you take that 12 months, 36 months, that cuts your benefit by 20%. And then you have, and take another year earlier than that, you got another 5% deduction. Then you got another 5% if you take it another year early. So if you take it at 62, you have a 30% lifelong reduction in your benefits forever. And your benefit, which goes up by the cost of living as you get older, is on a much smaller number. If you wait later on, and it's debatable when you should take it. I'm not going to say, hey, you never take it early, you never take it late. You always take it at a certain age because, there's no such thing as always when it comes to financial planning, in my humble opinion. And in Evans too, because I know we've had this debate a lot of times. He thinks I think you always ought to take it late. And I'm like, no, I've had lots of people where I have them take it earlier than that. But it just really depends on your situation and the benefits of relative benefits of husband and wife. But if you're dealing with a situation like that, you're permanently reducing your benefits because you have a 32% or 24% increase, from 67 to 70, and then you got the 30% reduction before that. You're really handicapping yourself in a significant way for the rest of your life, and you're taking this bet and not thinking about that they're going to reduce your benefits too forever. Is really likely what is going to happen. So you take it early, you think you're protecting yourself, but the reality of it is now, not so good. And having advice come like that from a financial advisor, that's just troubling. But anyway. All right, Evan.
That was it.
All right, cool. All right. I'll tell you what. What else you got going on?
Smart ways to take your tax refund. 3 big
what
questions.
What refund?
Yeah. Right.
Oh, we got to be talking about those people.
And then
people
actually, this was kind of in keeping with sort of a Mother's Day theme as I was thinking about stuff. Men, it's Mother's Day tomorrow.
Yeah. Heads up, man.
3 big questions to ask your aging parents.
Oh.
That makes for an interesting Mother's Day conversation.
Ooh. Yeah, that's an interesting.
But it was a good article.
I think that is interesting to me. And things to ask your aging parents. I find this so many people. I was talking to a guy recently, and a friend of mine lost his dad, and I was like, oh man, I'm so sorry. And he says, Paul, let me tell you something, man. He said, we were complete. And he was complete with all his friends too. And he was talking about how they had just spent so much time with each other, and they had talked through life, They had talked about how they felt about each other and what the impact that they had on each other. And it reminded me of my parents, myself. And I had written that little book, which was The Lessons of a Lifetime, which was all the stuff that they taught me and how they taught these great lessons. And I think that's such a critical conversation to have with people as they get older, because you don't get another chance. And some people had troubled relationships. I mean, sometimes that's not an easy conversation. What did they say there?
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, threw you a curveball.
Well, the three main things. One was asking how healthy are your finances? Mm-hmm. And, just kind of, and obviously strategy-wise, it helps if you're coming from this point of, we're here to help out and want to make sure you're okay kind of thing. But, your parents don't want to be a burden to us, right? And it may seem like everything's fine, but just asking simple things like, hey, are all the bills getting paid on time? Are you late on anything? That kind of stuff. Do they have investments?
They talk about powers of attorney, springing, being able to...
They got into some of the estate planning things as well, but the first category was just talking about the regular spending and what to do, like seeing if you can contact the utility company and be added as an emergency contact, so that you get notified if they miss a payment. Or
no, that's good stuff right there.
That kind of stuff.
That's really good stuff.
And they did talk about durable powers of attorney. If money's tight, helping your parents get in touch with organizations such as local senior services or departments on aging if you're not the one that's stepping up financially.
Right.
And even potentially helping them apply for Medicaid. It just kind of depends on the next big
being there for them in case you have a situation where, let's say, somebody's trying to take advantage of them financially.
Right.
Don't have shame in bringing this stuff up, because the technology, it can be so complicated, and a lot of times people get taken advantage of. Yeah.
Yep. And then they did get into having end-of-life plans and documents, making sure you review things like your beneficiary and all that.
And powers of attorney, a lot of times a custodian may not take a power of attorney that's too old. I mean, this sounds weird, but you just make sure that your financial institution will honor your power of attorney. Make sure that those documents stay up to date. We've found that many times that you have a power of attorney that's too old and they just don't accept it, and it can cause problems. So,
yep. And same thing, healthcare powers.
I was going to say healthcare powers is the other one. Help have somebody be able to make decisions, because the doctor has to keep you alive, and you may not want to in certain conditions. So you need to have that stuff looked at on a regular basis with attorneys. Yeah.
And it went so far as to say, hey, if your parents, if things are tight, offer to pay for the attorney. Offer to pay to have them meet with an estate planning or an elder law attorney. Yeah. That kind of stuff.
Yeah. And a lot of times parents don't want to ask for that help, but the reality of it is a lot of kids, you're robbing the kids of the ability to bless you.
Yeah.
That's what I found. Hey, this is Paul Winkler. Hope you enjoyed today's edition of the Investor Coaching Show. If you want to learn more about what we do, go to our website, paulwinkler.com. Until next time, I'm Paul Winkler, reminding you that I believe that more educated investors are more confident investors, and confident investors are more successful investors. Have a great one. Advisory services offered through Paul Winkler, Inc., an SEC-registered investment advisor. The opinions voiced and information provided in this material are for general informational purposes only and not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine what investments are appropriate for you, please consult with a financial advisor. Paul Winkler, Inc. does not provide tax or legal advice. Please consult your tax or legal advisor regarding your particular situation.